McCarthy Insurance Group, serving the community for over 70 years. For home, farm, motor, life, health and business insurance, log on to mig.ie or free phone 1800 50 11 11. Probably your best call in 2024. Charles McCarthy Insurance is trading as McCarthy Insurance Group, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Real people, real opinions, real talk radio. The multi-award-winning Niall Boylan Show.
Just Stop Oil, or the Just Stop Oil Coalition, as they're better known. I suppose they kind of embody the whole Extinction Rebellion as well. And if you haven't been watching the news, just to remind you again, on numerous occasions you may have seen protests where they will, glue themselves to pavements or spray paint on the Ferrari showrooms, or they sat in the middle of the track, the Grand Prix, the British Grand Prix. Also, as well, more recently, you would have seen the other night, one of them climbed up onto two of them attempted to, but one of them managed to get up onto a snooker table in the middle of the snooker championships and throw orange paint, or orange powder all over the snooker match, which kind of ruined the whole thing for everybody. But they say they're doing it to raise awareness that if we don't change and we don't stop using fossil fuels, that the world will come to an end. Now, they have promised that they will be doing the same thing for the London Marathon this week. Now, so far, we've been reasonably lucky in Ireland that we haven't had many of these protests, but they are saying now, Extinction Rebellion, of course, that they will be doing this in Ireland very soon, and they'll be ramping up their efforts. To give us more information and find out exactly what it is they're looking for is Sean Irish. Ironically enough, his name is Irish, and he is from Ireland originally. And Sean is living in the United Kingdom, and he's part of the coalition of Just Stop Oil. Good evening to you, Sean.
Good evening, Neil. Thank you for having me on. Can you hear me clearly? Because you come a bit rough on my end.
Okay, I can hear you perfectly fine. Now,
fantastic. Yep, so my name is Sean Irish. I'm 26 years of age, and I'm part of the Just Stop Oil Coalition over here in the UK, and we are demanding that the UK government immediately hold all new fossil fuel licenses in the UK. And also, just to be very clear, we are different to Extinction Rebellion. They are their own group, Just Stop Oil, Insulate Britain, and lots of other groups, but we are separate groups.
Okay, but you all seem to have the same commonalities when it comes to purpose and your intentions, I suppose.
Absolutely. We all want to be able to live, which is something that we have in common. And the IPCC reports have been very, very clear that if we do not end fossil fuel licenses, life on this planet, or life for humans, is not guaranteed.
Okay. Now, I don't want this conversation or debate to degrade into what I seen last night on the Piers Morgan show, which was two people insulting each other. And I think we can have a very educated debate between the two of us as to what the pros and the cons of your demands or your wishes are. Now, in relation to, first of all, let's deal first of all with, you're right, we'll come to the protests in a second and the snooker match and all that kind of stuff. But in relation to stopping fossil fuels, I mean, it's not as easy as turning around and, let's say, for example, Britain, for example, have about 7 to 8 years. I suppose they could be self-sustainable on fossil fuels for the next 7 to 8 years. If we stop giving out licenses, they will eventually run out. We don't have enough. We're not self-sufficient in sustainable fuels here in Ireland or in Great Britain, for that matter, and we won't be in 8 years' time. So if we ban fossil fuels, which are very cheap, let's be clear about it, if we ban fossil fuels for everybody, that means your energy prices are going to go up, jobs are going to be lost, it will be a disaster for the world economy. How do you answer that question?
That is a wonderful question, Neil, and it is something that people are wondering about. At the moment, we're going through a cost of living crisis, an energy crisis, and indeed the overarching climate crisis. But actually, the evidence is quite the opposite way. Fossil fuels are more expensive than renewables. At the height of the energy crisis,
hold on.
Renewables
they're not. Fossil fuels are cheap. The biggest problems with fossil fuels at the moment is we don't have enough refineries to refine them. And the reason for that is because of climate policy.
How much has your bill gone up? In the last year, how much of your energy bill has gone up?
Absolutely, but hang on. But the reason, let me just be clear about this. Fossil fuels, or let's say a barrel of oil, is actually cheaper now than it was 12 years ago. But the problem we have is getting it refined. You can find oil in the middle of the desert or somewhere out in Iraq with a bucket and spade if you want to. It's refining it. Yeah, we don't invest in refineries anymore because people are investing in sustainable fuels.
So the science is saying the opposite way. Science, what the IPCC report is saying is that if governments are serious about the climate crisis, there can be no new investment in oil, gas and coal from now on this year. And do you know when that was said? 2021. This is the world scientists coming together and saying what we need to do. You know, it's not a question of what's cheap or what, but this is what we need to do. There will not be a future for us if we do not. You know, it is undeniable that renewables are cheaper. Once it took six weeks to build the largest solar farm in the UK, 6 weeks, as opposed to from license to consent to production of North Sea gas in the UK, which is 20 years. We do not have 20 years to wait. So building new oil and gas now today.
Who says we don't have 20 years? Who's Greta said that? Who said we don't have 20 years?
The IPCC reports are very clear, and the Irish people and the English people are currently going through a cost of living and energy crisis. We do not have 20 years to wait for new oil, coal, and gas to come online. We can build solar farms, we can build wind farms, we can build tidal in a much shorter, faster period of time, cheaper, creating more jobs for the people of these countries.
Sean, I'm not against. Sean, I want to be clear about this. I'm not against. I think for everybody listening tonight and for the future of this planet, I do genuinely believe we need to be kinder to the planet. We need to be kinder to the environment. I'm not disagreeing with you in principle. But the problem, what I do agree with you, is this urgency around it. This planet has been here for a long, long time. The Industrial Revolution, of course, was created because of fossil fuels. And fossil fuels are with us at the moment. When they moved from the horse and cart to the car, it took a long time for people to accept that. And, you know, we will move eventually from the combustion engine, probably to electric vehicles or hydrogen vehicles or whatever it happens to be. But if we stop mining coal and capped, say, US oil and gas production tomorrow, we would not impact climate change one iota. Droughts would still continue, the ice caps would still melt, the oceans would still keep rising. All that would still happen. The only thing we would do is kneecap the economy.
Conversation, or are you going to talk to yourself?
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying it wouldn't make a difference.
Not asking for an end to all fossil fuels with immediate effect. Our demand is that the UK government end new fossil fuel licenses and fossil fuel consent. If you don't know what a license is permission for oil and gas companies to look for new sites of oil and gas. If they then find it, they then apply for a consent. Once they've applied for the consent, they then have permission to start building. That process takes 20 years. We are asking for an end to new oil and gas licenses and consents. We recognise that during the transition period, for the lights to stay on and for the NHS to run and the HSE in Ireland, we will need to have these things, but we need to start using it in diminishing qualities. We need to start looking at investing in public transportation so that there needs to be less cars on the road. We need to be investing in renewables. We need to be investing in insulation into British homes, particularly here in Britain. The UK has the leakiest homes in Europe, despite being the sixth wealthiest nation on the planet. People are dying in their homes every winter because the UK government is spending £2.3 billion funding the fossil fuel industry rather than having them actually pay taxes. They pay $2.3 billion more in subsidies than they get in taxes. The UK people are holding up the most profitable business in the world while people are going homeless, while people are starving, while people are dying here in the UK.
I for one, agree with you completely, and I don't believe energy companies should be allowed to do what they're currently doing at the moment, making the massive profits that they're making off the backs of people during a crisis. And I'm talking about the cost of living crisis, not so much the climate crisis.
So
and people are paying a lot of money.
That's what you said earlier, and will you be joining Extinction Rebellion in Ireland when they...
No, I won't. Okay, I won't be...
We are from Ireland. We come from a country of civil resistance. We would not have an Irish Republic if we did not have civil resistance. Civil resistance is how things have changed. It is how we got gay marriage in Ireland. It is how we got abortion rights in Ireland. It is how we got all of the liberties that we have in Ireland and in the UK. That is how change happens.
So here's the thing. Okay, civil resistance or civil disobedience, whatever word you want to use for it. Okay, so let's get to that. Okay, and we could talk. We'll come back to the fossil fuels in a second, and the fact that China. I mean, we're only a drop in the ocean to what China are doing. I know Britain are about 16% of the emissions of the world, but China are way up there. And I don't know why, for example, you're not over there protesting in Beijing or China or any other place.
That's a false dichotomy. That's like saying that the Irish people, it was their fault that they starved during the famine because the food was going to a different country. The problem is where the problem originates. Most of the fossil fuel industries are developed for the West. As you actually correctly pointed out, I'm glad you didn't say that the UK is 1% of emissions, because that's what most journalists say. You are correct in saying the UK is 16% of global emissions. That means money that is spent here in the UK funding fossil fuels and funding lower lifestyles in the rest of the world. That is something the UK needs to take responsibility for. You cannot blame other countries when it is your money.
Well, you can blame other countries when you're allegedly doing your best. And I would suggest that many countries are just virtue signalling. And let me give you a small example, Sean, if I can. Here in Ireland, only recently, I was talking to a gentleman. I was getting 2 tyres fitted onto my car, which, by the way, is a 2-litre diesel. I was getting 2 tyres fitted onto it, and all the old tyres were being put into the back of a van, and they're being brought down to somewhere in Ireland and I said, are you going to burn them, or what happens to them? I was just curious. And he says, no, we're not allowed to. We don't have a license to burn them. We're not allowed to burn them in Ireland. So we send them to China. And I said, what happens to them in China? He says, they burn them in a concrete factory. And I said, so what is the point of sending them from Ireland on a boat, which runs on diesel or some propane or whatever the hell it runs on, all the way to China, only for them to be burnt there instead? That makes no difference, and all that is virtue signalling. And what you're doing essentially is protesting in the UK, you will just get the problem moved.
Stop virtue signalling. This is what we're talking about. So we are asking for real sustainable change. The UK government leads on only one thing, and that is greenwashing. They are not doing anywhere enough. Their own scientists, they are illegal. They are breaking international law. They are broken the Paris Accord agreements. They have broken the agreements that they have made with the EU. They've broken the agreements they've made with the UN. They are in breach of international law. And then they have the gall to get out on COP27 and say that they are leaders of the green world. Boris Johnson, when he was Prime Minister, referred to himself as Mr. Green. The fact is that if we do not do something, there is not a future. We won't be able to have these debates on the radio.
But Sean, I've been hearing that. I'm nearly 60 years of age, and in my lifetime, I have heard numerous outspoken leaders, people, experts, scientists telling me the world is going to end in 1975. The world is going to end in 1988. Global warming, holes in the ozone layer, acid rain. I've heard all of these doomsday dates, and yet, more recently, we heard Greta. But hold on, nothing happened. We didn't die.
What happened with the ozone layer?
Well, the ozone layer seemed to fix itself because nobody's heard anything more about it.
No, because we took action. We took action. The main problem with the ozone layer is an issue that we don't have anymore because we took action on it.
What?
We are still seeing...
By banning hairspray bottles. Banning hairspray bottles didn't sort that.
Here in the UK last year, we had food burning. We had food burning in the fields. We had the fire brigades on the worst that they'd ever been since World War II. This is the same time where government is spending over £2 billion a year to the fossil fuel industry while the NHS collapse, while people go homeless. We are demanding that the UK government take action, and you should be supporting anyone who does that, because you're saying you're 60 years of age. You're not old enough to avoid the worst case of the climate crisis. It is coming down the road. We're already seeing crop failure in the UK. We lost 1/3 of our wheat crop last year, 50% of our potato crop. It's not.
Okay,
great grandchildren.
Well, let's get to the process. Indigo Rumbelow, by the way, who is one of your members of the coalition. Mind you, you're aware who Indigo is, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, okay. And what would her position be? Is she your spokesperson, your main spokesperson?
She's one of the many people who support Just Stop Oil and our demands.
Would you class yourselves, maybe not just you, Sean, but other Just Stop Oil people as hypocrites? Because she was called out as a hypocrite because she herself has gone on holidays to Sweden, Lithuania, Croatia, and other beauty spots around the world. And, and had to be told actually to stop shouting on Sky News recently. But I mean, it's all well and good telling people to do one thing, but it's almost like politicians sometimes do as we say, not as we do, when you, yourself, and your fellow comrades who would be in the coalition will tell people to do one thing, but then you would do something else. I don't know if all your clothes are eco-friendly or not.
So all my clothes are second-hand and I've never flown in my life. But actually what you're talking about is individual change. And it's one of the few things I do agree with people on when they say, what is the point of you stopping driving your diesel car? You said you drove a diesel car earlier. And if you notice, I didn't call you out for it because you as an individual have so little power. It is government policy that needs to change and things change with it. When Ireland brought in gay marriage, it didn't get rid of homophobes. But it did change the policy overnight in Ireland to allow and help the culture to change around that. I was in Ireland during that time, and as a young gay man, it was an ecstatic time. It was a wonderful time, but it didn't solve homophobia.
But it's not a good analogy. It's not. Your sexual orientation is not interchangeable. I mean, you can't change that. So it's not a good analogy. When we talk about climate and we're talking about, what we use to fuel our homes or to heat our homes or light our homes or fuel our industry, they're things we can change.
Someone went on years ago, I think, is a little bit neither here nor there. She hasn't been on holiday anytime recently. I can assure you. I work in the same office, and she's a very busy lady.
Okay, let me get to the protest. What was the point on some guy jumping up on a snooker table and flinging powder all over it when essentially all he did was delay the snooker match? Those individuals who were there for the match probably missed the last train, ended up getting a train home instead of getting the local, ended up getting a taxi home because they missed the last train. And they probably used more fuel to get home than they would have before. So there was it defeated the whole purpose. It was pointless. And all it did, and when I look at the Twitter, hang on, just let me finish, Sean, what I'm saying, then I'll let you respond. When I looked at the Twitter account of the individual who did it, he was criticised.
The reason they did it is I'm talking to you now. You reached out to me to talk to me. Why did they target the GPO in 1916? Why did the suffragettes jump in front of the king's horses? Why did the civil rights movement block buses and all of these things? You can argue that they didn't have very little to do with government policy. The point is, in April of last year, I got arrested loads and loads and loads of times at an oil terminal, and it was ignored by the media because you didn't care. It was only when we reach out and we start doing things like things. So if you want to know why we do it, it's because journalists won't contact us unless we do. This is how we get our voice heard. This is how civil resistance happens. This is why, cultural things are targeted, because it's how you get your voice heard. It's how you get the change to happen. The AIDS movement, they targeted churches. They targeted all sorts of different things. And none of these things had power over the government either. But it gets your voice out there. It gets
okay, I accept that. Okay, so it's seeking attention, and that's fair enough. You got plenty of it. But I would suggest to you that most of the attention that you're getting is negative.
Well, I would strongly disagree. We have grown massively as a result of our campaign. A lot of people recognise, and I'm one of them, that dying for an oil baron's profits is not in our interest. So whether you like our tactics or not, you agree with our message. Do you want to die for an oil baron's profits?
I don't agree with your tactics at all. And by the way, when many of you kneeled on the track at the Grand Prix, not only did you put your own lives in danger, but you put the lives of other people in danger too.
Which again has been proven to be absolutely untrue.
No, it's not untrue. I watched the footage. It's not untrue, Sean. I watched the footage. The cars were driving around you. They had to avoid you. You put your own lives in danger, and the people who had to run out and take you off the track, or not you in particular, but people off the track, they put their lives in danger as well. That's not right. That's not achieving anything.
Government policy is putting us all in danger.
Come on. At least agree with me on something. Give me something here. Go out and protest. Get attention. Yes, you're right.
I agree that these things shouldn't be happening. The UK government and the Irish government should not be putting its citizens in a position where they feel so desperate because they're ignoring the scientists. This is a simple fact. If we were a logical society in a logical country, all it would take is one journalist talking to one scientist, and this would have been sorted decades ago. The fact is the UK government and the Irish government are simply not doing enough. And if they're not doing enough, young people will continue to take action, because I refuse to lie down and die just because I'm told it's legal to do so. I'm told it's illegal for me to fight back, but it's legal for them to kill me. And I don't consider that justifiable.
But I don't believe, but hang on, I don't believe that you've thought your argument fully through. For example, and just hear me out. Switching to renewables or even nuclear power doesn't eliminate emissions. It only reduces them, and sometimes not that much at all. And the manufacture and construction of wind turbines, solar power, as well as their maintenance, requires significant amounts of energy, even if they do not require fuel per se, which beggars the question, if the approach taken to fossil fuel consumption is that no greenhouse gas emissions are permissible, why shouldn't renewables also be banned as well?
That's an interesting question. I'd like you to repeat it to yourself slowly. Yes, we do need power to run the country, and we recognise that. The NHS runs on it, everything runs on it. So yes, it takes a certain amount of carbon to build a windmill, but once it's built, it's a hell of a lot less carbon. It takes millions and millions and millions of tons of concrete to build an oil terminal, and then millions and millions and millions and millions of tons of oil to keep it running. It might take a couple of thousand tons of concrete or whatever to build a windmill, but once it's built, it produces energy.
Yeah, it needs to be maintained. They don't last very long. Not from what I've seen, and I've seen these wind turbine, the blades off them being buried in the ground. By the way, do you agree with electric cars?
So we're not having an argument over electric cars. I think if we replaced all cars, all fuel cars with all electric cars, we'd have the same problem that we have now.
So what do we do? So what do we do? Do we get just cars off the road? Is that what we do?
Absolutely not. There's people who need cars, there's people who absolutely need cars, and we're not opposed to people going to cars to the work or whatever, but we need to start looking at a reduction of our economy, or not a reduction of our economy, a reduction of our energy use.
So, but how do we do that if you, by your own admission, people need cars, and you don't want to get into a debate about electric cars?
My sentence, I was just about to say. So you invest in public transportation. That is a fantastic way. So could you imagine if you have to drive to work, for example, you've got, bag full of tools and whatever else, you get out on the road at 7 a.m. and there's thousands of people who are just going to their office who could have easily been on a bus or a train if there had been adequate investment in public transportation. Or you get home and you turn on your heating, and most of your heating goes out through your poor loft insulation and your single glazed windows, and so you're spending more money on your energy bill. So we're talking about insulating British homes that are old and dying every winter because the government can't invest in our health services and can't invest in our old people. They can invest millions of pounds in fossil fuel industries, but it's okay for our grandmothers and our grandparents to die in their homes because they're not profitable to the government anymore.
What about typically, I suppose, the byproducts of fossil fuels, they don't stir much enthusiasm, but because people tend to forget the clothes, furnishings, cosmetics, things like aspirin, solar panels themselves are built, using the byproducts of fossil fuels, dentures, toothpaste, packaging, computer components. These are all built from byproducts of oil. So what happens to all of them?
Well, they'll outlive us because we'll be dead if we don't do something about it.
No, I'm not asking you for some sort of philosophical answer. I'm asking you just to answer the question. So what happens? Do we just abandon everything? Where are we going to get plastic from?
The UK government and new oil and gas licenses, and that is moving towards a renewable energy system. There is loads.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm with you. That's fine. I'm with you. I'm asking you about the byproducts that we use, that we get from oil. I'm not asking you about energy. I'm not asking you about heating homes, lighting homes, driving around.
Again, we're not asking to turn off the taps. We're saying stop building new taps and stop using the taps.
Well, you are, because as you, by your own admission, in the UK, you've got about 8 years left of oil and gas, right? If we stop giving out licenses, the tap will turn off in 8 years. So then where are we going to get plastics from? Where are we going to get all those other byproducts that we get from oils, textiles, all those other things, industry? How are we going to operate all of these things? Have you thought about all of this, Sean?
The main reason we use all of those things now at the moment is because they're a cheap byproduct of the fossil fuel industry.
Yes, you're right. They are cheap. Yes.
It's not because there is an alternative. As we invest into actual renewables and as we move away, hemp is a fantastic. But again, these are all pointless arguments.
They're not pointless arguments. They're sensible arguments. You're giving me pointless answers by times.
Do they matter? Does it matter where your clothes come from if it's only going to dress your corpse?
Well, that's a daft answer. I'm still going to be alive for 80 years. Don't you worry. And most of us will be alive. If we look at this planet and the time spent on this planet, the planet is not going to, combust in 12 years' time. Contrary to what Greta says, it's not going to combust.
Planet's not, but we're going to have 1 billion refugees by 2050. 1 billion refugees. We're already seeing the refugee, what's happening over in the UK with the extremely far-right government that doesn't want to have refugees at all. 1 billion refugees are going to be moved. Let's say Ireland somehow magically avoids all of the climate disaster. Are you able to house 1 billion people fleeing their countries?
We're doing a good job at the moment, but we're doing our best to trying to do it, I can tell you. But in saying that, getting back to what you're talking about, the climate itself, and I'm not averse to what scientists are saying in relation to climate change, etc., but we have to accept that the world's, this planet's climate does change anyway. And there's nothing you, Sean, or there's nothing that, your members, or there's nothing that Indigo can do about that. That's going to happen anyway, isn't it? Would you accept that? Sean, would you accept the climate changes anyway?
Of course it does. We've got summer, we've got winter, we've got...
No, I'm not. No, you're being disingenuous. No, would you accept over the course of history that climate changes?
Of course it has, but we are seeing a direct effect of the human impact on the climate right now. That what happens over billions of years of the Earth's existence is neither here nor there. We don't get billions of years of change in a short 100-year period, which is what we are seeing now. We are seeing crops fail. We are seeing people having to move. We are seeing climate refugees. This is not common. We do not get millions of years of Earth's tectonic plate shifts and the slight moving from gravitational wind pulls and moons and all that.
I think what you're saying, you're grossly
grossly
exaggerating, by the way, the world and we live in. If we look back at 1906, more people died in climate disasters in this country than died in the last 4 or 5 years. So I think you're wrong in what you're saying. You need to look up do a bit of research on the facts, and many people are actually dying because of the climate. And a lot of the reason for that is that we're more on the ball nowadays, and we report it quicker. We know when things are going to happen. We know when an earthquake is going to happen. We know when a tidal wave is coming, and we have better systems of reporting so we can save more lives.
So you've just answered your own question.
Okay, Sean. No, I didn't. Because if you actually look at weather events, I'm talking about climatic weather events or dramatic weather events. That really hasn't changed. If you had been living in the United Kingdom many, many years ago, you would have been able to skate on the Thames in the middle of winter. But you can't do that now because the climate has changed. If you had been in the UK, by the way, back in the 11th century, you would have been able to grow grapes because it was so warm. The climate does naturally change anyway. Yes, we can do the right thing, Sean.
Can I stop you right quickly? Can I stop you? Do you believe in the IPCC reports?
Do I believe? Not everything, no.
So you are.
I believe. No, I'm not a climate denier at all. Of course, I believe the climate is changing. Of course, I believe we need to do more, and of course, I believe we need to protect the environment. Of course, I believe in all of that, and of course, I believe that what many scientists are saying, that we need to take action and we need to do more. Absolutely, I'm agreeing with all that, but I don't have to believe everything in the IPCC report. Now, just in relation to, I suppose, the protests. You're ramping up the protests. The London Marathon is coming up soon, and it's been said that you guys are going to be out there, and girls are going to be out there, to disrupt the London Marathon this weekend. What about Ireland? So far, we haven't seen, thankfully, much protest, people gluing themselves to pavements and doors and walls in this country yet. Is that a plan for the future?
Well, I can't say what would happen in Ireland. I'm not currently living there, so that would be for the people of Ireland to decide. But I wouldn't be surprised, as young people of Ireland start to realise that dying for an oil baron's profits is not in their interest. I wouldn't be surprised if more Irish people start to rise up. We are from a culture of civil resistance. We've got some more advantages in Ireland in that we have a more functional democracy. Things might be able to happen that they don't have in the UK, which is why it's much more necessary over here. But I would not be surprised if there was action taken. I grew up as a scout in Ireland. I grew up learning about nature and, spending time out in nature. And, we're seeing that being destroyed just because the 1% don't want to, risk losing any of their invested interests. I wouldn't be surprised, and targeting cultural events, is an Irish tradition. We've done it for a very long time. This is a cultural thing, Civil resistance is part of our culture.
Will you be coming home? You're originally from Waterford, I think. Are you originally from Waterford?
No, County Wexford.
Wexford. I do apologise.
Last time was the British Empire and the first to rise back up, County Wexford.
Okay, so you don't come back over to Ireland every now and again, do you know? With a name like Irish.
No, I haven't been back now. I left in 2018. I went back once there last year because I thought I was going to prison. I'm going to prison now next month, so I might pop back again to say hello to family. But no, I don't. Did
you come home on a plane? Just curious.
No, I take the ferry when I come over.
Oh, okay. Well, that still uses fuel anyway. I don't know if there's any electric ferries yet, to be honest with you, but it still uses some fuel.
It does indeed use fuel, but again, we're not talking. So again, I'm not against little old granny driving down to collect her weekly paper and do her weekly shop and do all things.
Are you against people going on holidays? Like, for example, would you be against me heading off to, say, Florida on a holiday on a jet that's burning up a lot of fuel? Would you be against that?
Again, we are targeting government policy. There's the biggest emitters are governments and their policies.
You didn't answer my question. Are you against me going on holidays?
I would question your choice of where to go on holiday, but no, not necessarily would I stop you from going on. It's not my place to stop you from going on holiday.
Yeah, but you'd like me to pay more money for it. You'd like me to pay some sort of, carbon credits for doing it, wouldn't you? I suppose.
No, again, I think a lot of the problem that's happened with the green energy is that the only time people see green policies is when they see their own taxes go up. That's not what we're arguing for. It's the government who needs to be putting in policy change. It's polluting companies that need to be paying taxes. Of course, people are opposed to green energy policies when all they ever see is their bills going up, but the government ramping out with more energy.
But do you not see the hypocrisy? Look at Ireland, for example, right? we tell farmers, that they need to reduce their herd, for example, because we don't want, cows belching in fields and increasing the carbon emissions. So all that happens is they have more cows in Argentina and Brazil, and we buy imported Argentine and Brazilian meat instead. So in other words, they're just farting and belching in another country in the world where there isn't any protesters.
Well, this is the type of hypocrisy that I mean. What foot does the Irish government have to stand on if it is not doing what the IPC report is saying? The IPC
but
report
it is doing it. But it is doing it. It's doing it to the letter, probably. But the point I'm making is all it's doing is damaging the livelihoods of farmers and improving the livelihoods of farmers in other countries who don't give a damn.
Again, the biggest risk to farmers is in a climate where they can no longer grow crops. We're already seeing that happen. That is the biggest risk to farmers.
You think farmers would disagree with you? They're quite happy with the weather at the moment. The farmers. Have you been here over the last month? I've never seen so much rain in all my life.
Well, I can always be right onto a bit of rain. We're getting rain over here.
So, Sean, what were you found guilty of?
So I haven't been found guilty yet. I was protesting at a oil terminal over here in the UK, and then I've done quite a few things. So there's a long list. But the one that I'm in court for this time is I went into the largest petrol station in the UK and I smashed up the pumps.
But see, that's criminal damage, Sean. You can't do that. Whatever. I mean, but that's not protesting. You don't have a legitimate right to damage property. You have a legitimate right to protest. You do understand the purpose of protest.
I occupied a GPO in 1916.
Are you a criminal? Are you a criminal? Do you want to be a criminal? Because that's what you're doing. That's criminality.
Do you know what? Time in a British prison scares me a hell of a lot less than going through the climate crisis. What we are looking at, I have friends who are from Syria and from Palestine and from all these other countries, places that are getting worse and worse and the regimes that they're living under. Like the UK is getting terrifying in terms of law. One person I'd recommend you look up, his name is Judge Reed. And I was in front of him. I was not allowed a solicitor. I was denied access to a solicitor. I was not allowed to call the Irish embassy, and I was not allowed to inform anyone of my arrest. I was nearly sent to prison in the UK by a judge without any hearing.
But by your own admission, your behaviour of going into a garage forecourt or whatever it is and criminally damaging the pumps, I'd put you in jail if I was a judge. Because you can't do that. I mean, if you want to stand outside the garage on the footpath with a thing in your hand saying, down with fossil fuels, you far away. You're quite legally entitled to do that. That's the Constitution here in Ireland allows you to do that, and I'm sure common law in Britain allows you to do that. But you don't. There's no law that says you have a right to go in and destroy property.
So actually, there is a right. There's a right of necessity. The risk in the UK of we continue what we're doing. There's no,
Sean, stop it, will you? There's no legal right for you to destroy property or other people's property. It's criminal damage.
The UK government and the Irish government to put its citizens at risk. For the
Sean, what about yourself? Can I ask you honestly, right? And I just want to wrap it up. We agree on some things, we disagree on a lot, okay? But I don't want to get into an insulting match because I've heard too many interviews where people like yourself and presenters start shouting and roaring at each other and start insulting each other. That's easy to do, okay? But I want to ask you about your belief and how it causes you so much stress and upset. And I'm listening to you now, right? And man to man, okay? I can hear that you're very stressed by all this. You're very upset by all this. And I want to ask you honestly, and I'm asking you, are people of your age, are you okay? Because you seem very worried about it. I'm nearly 60. I'm not as worried as you are.
No, we're not okay. This is the point. The young generation is absolutely terrified of the future that's being given to us. We are not given the opportunity to work a job, pay for a house, start a family and retire because that is not guaranteed to us. Our generation is, we're the most well-educated generation, certainly, but no one's listening to the educated people. They're ignoring the scientists. They're ignoring the International Energy Agency. They're ignoring all of the experts, and they're hurtling on with something that they've been told will kill us. That is a death project.
But you're 26. You're 26 years of age. How do you? And please don't take this as an insult. Do you have a job?
So I'm currently self-employed. I used to work in green renewable energy, believe it or not, because I was trying to, fix it from the inside.
Okay,
do something that you're passionate about and change things.
But you're currently
and then the energy crisis.
You're self-employed at the moment. What do you do self-employed? What are you doing?
I do deliveries on my bicycle, and I supply trainings for different groups.
And can I ask you an honest question without talking about climate change and everything else? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Do you see yourself in a good job, or where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years' time, I am hoping that the UK government and the Irish government will have come around to what needs to be done. And world government.
No, I'm not asking that. It's like an obsession now at this stage. I'm asking you where you see yourself personally in 5 years' time.
Well, it very much depends on the actions of the government. I would love to settle down. I would love to adopt children.
Settle down. There you go.
I have a loving partner that I would love to start a family with, and I would love to adopt children.
Then why don't you? Well, hold on, Sean. Why don't you focus on that instead of putting all of your energy into this and ending up in jail?
Because if we do not make change, that future is not there for me. That future is not there for your grandchildren, your children.
That future is there for you in 5 years. The world is not going to end in 5 years, Sean. And I can assure you the world is not going to stop using fossil fuels in 5 years' time. I can absolutely assure you of that, no matter what you do and how many pavements you glue yourself to.
You know, I hope you're wrong. I really, really do hope you're wrong, because this is what what we're looking at, and young people are not going to lie over and die, and this is why so many young people are taking action over here in the UK. You know,
I feel sorry for young people. I do feel sorry for young people. I think young people. I mean, don't get me wrong. Hang on. I agreed with you at the very start of this conversation that we all need to be kinder to the planet. There's no doubt about that. But what I'm saying is I'm concerned about young people and the stresses they're putting themselves under, worried about stuff unnecessarily.
We're very self-assured in what we shouldn't be doing. So tell us what we should be doing. You tell me what we can do to assure future life on this planet. And I promise you,
elect. Okay, well, what you need to do is you need to try and get people into government, if that's what you want to do. I don't know if any of you have ever been elected in British Parliament. I don't think you have. But you need to get people into government. You need to get people into government who have the ability to make change, but make reasonable changes that don't affect people's lives.
So every party, with the exception of the Tory government, realised that we need to end new fossil fuel licences. So we've already achieved that. There's many MPs who recognise that dying for an oil baron's profits is not in the interest of their constituents. So that is not an issue. We have 70% of the UK population recognise that we need to take more action on the energy crisis,
maybe absolutely. But do you think 70% of the UK? Do you think 70% of the UK population saw that guy on the snooker table the other day and thought he was a great man? I think 70% of them thought he was a clown.
So 70% of the UK population say we need to take more action on the climate crisis. You may not like our methods, as people didn't like the suffragettes' methods, they didn't like the civil rights movement, and people didn't like when people occupied the GPO in 1916. Most Irish people during 1916 found it very inconvenient that they'd done that, and they were very annoyed about it, that these bunch of random radicals had gone over and occupied a post office while they were trying to deliver their post. You know, a lot of Irish people were very upset about it, and it took time for these things to change. But the point is, if people didn't take these type of actions, change wouldn't happen. We would not have the island that we have today if it wasn't for people standing out and taking action. We wouldn't have the rights that we enjoy here in the United Kingdom if people hadn't stood out and taken rights. You know, how many of your colleagues are female and have the right to vote? You know, how many of your colleagues are gay and have the right to not go to a psychiatric unit? How many of your colleagues are, you know, from a different ethnic group and have the right to live in Ireland and operate in Ireland and aren't restricted as a result of civil resistance and campaign groups coming out? Okay. So you can say you don't like our methods, but you like our results. You like the suffragette results.
No, in relation to this particular argument, I don't like the results, but however. Okay, Sean, I wish you well. I'd like to say I hope you don't go to jail, but in saying that, sadly, I have to say to you that if you do commit criminal damage, that is where you will end up, and you must be aware of that. You're not a silly man. You're an intelligent young man.
I'm not a silly man.
Okay. But and also you are affecting. You do understand in the bigger picture as well, by getting yourself a criminal record or having charges against you or being found guilty in a court of law or ending up in jail or whatever it is. You will affect your whole life and your whole career, probably more than any climate will ever affect it. So, Sean, I wish you well.
Previous generations didn't have the same viewpoint as you, or we wouldn't have had the rights that we have today.
Okay, Sean, I wish you well, and listen, thank you very much indeed for what I would say respectful debate. All right. Thank you, Sean. All right. Bye, Sean.
Real people, real opinions, real talk radio. The multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.